The Monkees are an American rock band that released music in their original incarnation between 1965 and 1971, with subsequent reunion albums and tours in the decades that followed. They were formed in Los Angeles in 1965 by Bob Rafelson and Bert Schneider for the American television series The Monkees, which aired from 1966 to 1968. The musical acting quartet was composed of Americans Mickey Dolenz, Michael Nesmith and Peter Tork and Englishman Davy Jones. The band's music was initially supervised by producer Don Kirshner. Dolenz described the Monkees as initially being a TV show about an imaginary band that wanted to be the Beatles. But that was never successful. The active musicians, however, soon became a real band. As Dolenz later described it, the Monkees really becoming a band was like the equivalent of Leonard Nimoy, who played the alien officer Spock in Star Trek, really becoming a Vulcan. For the first few months of their initial 5-year career as the Monkees, the 4 active musicians were allowed only limited roles in the recording studio. This was due in part to the amount of time required to film the television series. Nonetheless, Nesmith did compose and produce some songs from the beginning, and Peter Tork contributed limited guitar work on the sessions produced by Nesmith. They eventually fought for and earned the right to collectively supervise all musical output under the band's name. The sitcom was cancelled in 1968, but the band continued to record music through 1971. A revival of interest in the television show came in 1986, which led to a series of reunion tours and new records. Up until 2011, the group had reunited and toured several times, with varying degrees of success. Despite the sudden death of Davy Jones on 29 February 2012, the surviving members reunited for a tour in November-December 2012 and again in 2013 for a 24-date tour. The Monkees have sold more than 75 million records worldwide and had international hits, including Last Train to Clarksville, Pleasant Valley Sunday, Daydream Believer, and I'm a Believer. At their peak in 1967, the band outsold the Beatles and the Rolling Stones combined. Conception. Aspiring filmmaker Bob Rafelson developed the initial idea for the Monkees in 1962, but was unsuccessful in selling the series. He had tried selling it to Revue, the television division of Universal Pictures. In May 1964, while working at Screen Gems, Rafelson teamed up with Bert Schneider, whose father, Abraham Schneider, headed the Colpix Television and Screen Gems television units of Columbia Pictures. Rafelson and Schneider ultimately formed Ray Burt Productions. The Beatles' film A Hard Day's Night inspired Rafelson and Schneider to revive Rafelson's idea for the Monkees. As the Ray Burt producers, they sold the show to Screen Gems Television on April 16, 1965. Rafelson and Schneider's original idea was to cast an existing New York folk rock group, the Lovin' Spoonful, who were not widely known at the time. However, John Sebastian had already signed the band to a record contract, which would have denied Screen Gems the right to market music from the show. On July 14, 1965, The Hollywood Reporter stated that future band member Davy Jones was expected to return to the United States in September 1965 after a trip to England to prepare for a TV pilot for Bert Schneider and Bob Rafelson. Jones had previously starred as the Artful Dodger in the Broadway show Oliver, which debuted on December 17, 1962, and his performance was later seen on The Ed Sullivan Show the same night as the Beatles' first appearance on that show, February 9, 1964. He was nominated for a Tony Award for Best Supporting Actor in a Musical in 1963. In September 1964 he was signed to a long-term contract to appear in TV programs for Screen Gems, make feature films for Columbia Pictures and to record music for the Colpix label. Rafelson and Schneider already had him in mind for their project after their plans for the Lovin' Spoonful fell through. When they chose him, He was essentially a proto-star looking for his lucky break. On September 8–10, 1965, Daily Variety and The Hollywood Reporter ran an ad to cast the remainder of the band cast members for the TV show Madness. Auditions. Folk and roll musicians, singers for acting roles in new TV series. Running parts for 4 insane boys, age 17 to 21. Want spirited Ben Franks types. Have courage to work. Must come down for interview. Out of 437 applicants, the other 3 chosen for the cast of the TV show were Michael Nesmith, Peter Tork and Mickey Dolenz. Nesmith had been working as a musician since early 1963 and had been recording and releasing music under various names, including Michael Blessing and Mike and John and Bill, and had studied drama in college. Contrary to popular belief, of the final 4, Nesmith was the one member who actually saw the ad in the Daily Variety and The Hollywood Reporter. Tork, the last to be chosen, had been working the Greenwich Village scene as a musician, and had shared the stage with Pete Seeger. He learned of the Monkees from Stephen Stills, whom Raffilson and Schneider had rejected. Dolenz was an actor who had starred in the TV series Circus Boy as a child, using the stage name Mickey Braddock, and he had also played guitar and sung in a band called The Missing Links before the Monkees, which had recorded and released a very minor single, Don't Do It. By that time he was using his real name. He found out about the Monkees through his agent, developing the music for their debut album. During the casting process, Don Kirshner, Screen Gems' head of music, was contacted to secure music for the pilot that would become the Monkees. Not getting much interest from his usual stable of brill-building writers, Kirshner assigned Tommy Boyce and Bobby Hart to the project. The duo contributed 4 demo recordings for the pilot. One of these recordings was The Monkees, which helped get the series the green light. When The Monkees was picked up as a series, development of the musical side of the project accelerated. Columbia, Screen Gems and RCA Records entered into a joint venture called Colgems Records primarily to distribute Monkees records. Ray Burt set up a rehearsal space and rented instruments for the group to practice playing in April 1966. But it quickly became apparent they would not be in shape in time for the series' debut. The producers called upon Kirshner to recruit a producer for the Monkees sessions. Kirshner called on Snuff Garrett, composer of several hits by Gary Lewis and the Playboys, to produce the initial musical cuts for the show. Garrett, upon meeting the 4 Monkees in June 1966, decided that Jones would sing lead, a choice that was unpopular with the group. This cool reception led Kirshner to drop Garrett and buy out his contract. Kirshner next allowed Nesmith to produce sessions, provided he did not play on any tracks he produced. Nesmith did, however, start using the other Monkees on his sessions, particularly Tork as a guitarist. Kirshner came back to the enthusiastic Boyce and Hart to be the regular producers, but he brought in one of his top East Coast associates, Jack Keller, to lend some production experience to the sessions. Boyce and Hart observed quickly that when brought into the studio together, the 4 actors would fool around and try to crack each other up. Because of this, they would often bring in each singer individually. According to Nesmith, it was Dolenz's voice that made the Monkees sound distinctive, and even during tension-filled times Nesmith and Tork sometimes turned over lead vocal duties to Dolenz on their own compositions, such as Tork's For Pete's Sake, which became the closing title theme for the second season of the television show. The Monkees' debut and second albums were meant to be a soundtrack to the first season of the TV show, to cash in on the audience. In the 2006 Reno Deluxe Edition reissue of their second album, More of the Monkees, Mike Nesmith stated, "The first album shows up and I look at it with horror because it makes us appear as if we are rock and roll band. There's no credit for the other musicians. I go completely ballistic, and I say, what are you people thinking? The powers that be say, well, you know, it's the fantasy. I say, it's not the fantasy. You've crossed the line here. You are now duping the public. They know when they look at the television series that we're not a rock and roll band. It's a show about a rock and roll band. Nobody for a minute believes that we are somehow this accomplished rock and roll band that got their own television show. You putting the record out like this is just beyond the pale. Within a few months of their debut album, music supervisor Don Kirshner would be forcibly dismissed and the Monkees would take control as a real band. The Monkees' first single, Last Train to Clarksville, B.W. Take a Giant Step, was released in August 1966, just weeks prior to the TV broadcast debut. In conjunction with the first broadcast of the television show on September 12, 1966, on the NBC television network, NBC and Columbia had a major hit on their hands. The first long-playing album, The Monkees, was released a month later, spent 13 weeks at number 1 and stayed on the Billboard charts for 78 weeks. 20 years later, during their reunion, it would spend another 24 weeks on the Billboard charts. This first album is also notable, in addition to containing their debut single, for containing band member Nesmith's first foray into country rock, Papa Jean's Blues, which mixed country, rock and Latin flavors, from television to concert stage. In assigning instruments for purposes of the television show, a dilemma arose as to which of the four would be the drummer. Both Nesmith and Talk were peripherally familiar with the instrument, but both declined to give the drum set a try. Jones knew how to play the drums and tested well enough initially on the instrument, but the producers felt that, behind a drum kit, the camera would exaggerate his short stature and make him virtually hidden from view. Thus, Dolenz was assigned to become the drummer. Talk taught Dolenz his first few beats on the drums, enough for him to fake his way through filming the pilot, but he was soon taught how to play properly. Thus, the lineup for the TV show most frequently featured Nesmith on guitar, Talk on bass, Dolenz on drums and Jones as a frontman, singer and percussionist. This, however, is in opposition to the lineup which would have made the most sense based upon the members' musical strengths. For example, Talk is actually a better guitar player than Nesmith, while Nesmith had at one time specifically trained on the bass. While Jones certainly had a strong lead voice and sings lead on several Monkees recordings, Dolenz's voice is regarded, particularly by Nesmith, as one of the most distinctive in popular music history and a hallmark of the Monkees' sound. This theoretical lineup was actually depicted once, in the music video for the band's song, Words, which shows Jones on drums, Talk playing lead guitar, Nesmith on bass and Dolenz fronting the group. In concert appearances, Talk also took much of the guitar duties, even in appearances with Nesmith, and Dolenz often plays rhythm guitar on stage. Unlike most television shows of the time, the Monkees episodes were written with many setups, requiring frequent breaks to prepare the set and cameras for short bursts of filming. Some of the bursts are considered proto-music videos, inasmuch as they were produced to sell the records. Eric Lefkowitz, in The Monkees' Tale, pointed out that the Monkees were, first and foremost, a video group. The four actors would spend 12-hour days on the set, many of them waiting for the production crew to do their jobs. Noticing that their instruments were left on the set unplugged, the four decided to turn them on and start playing. After working on the set all day, the Monkees would be called into the recording studio to cut vocal tracks. As the band was essential to this aspect of the recording process, there were few limits on how long they could spend in the recording studio, and the result was an extensive catalogue of unreleased recordings. On tour, pleased with their initial efforts, Columbia planned to send the Monkees out to play live concerts. The massive success of the series and its spin-off records created intense pressure to mount a touring version of the group. Against the initial wishes of the producers, the band went out on the road and made their debut live performance in December 1966 in Hawaii. They had no time to rehearse a live performance except between takes on set. They worked on the TV series all day, recorded in the studio at night and slept very little. The weekends were usually filled with special appearances or filming of special sequences. These performances were sometimes used during the actual series. The episode Too Many Girls opens with a live version of Steppin' Stone being performed as the scene was shot. One entire episode was filmed featuring live music. The last show of the premiere season, Monkees on Tour, was shot in a documentary style, by filming a concert in Phoenix, Arizona, on January 21, 1967. Bob Rafelson wrote and directed the episode. In DVD commentary tracks included in the Season 1 release, Nesmith admitted that Talk was better at playing guitar than bass. In Talk's commentary, he stated that Jones was a good drummer, and had the live performance lineups been based solely on playing ability, it should have been Talk on guitar, Nesmith on bass and Jones on drums, with Dolenz taking the fronting role. The four Monkees performed all the instruments and vocals for most of the live set. The most notable exceptions were during each member's solo sections where, during the December 1966–May 1967 tour, they were backed by the Candy Store Prophets. During the summer 1967 tour of the United States and the UK, they were backed by a band called the Sundonors. In 1968, the Monkees toured Australia and Japan. The results were far better than expected. Wherever they went, the group was greeted by scenes of fan adulation reminiscent of Beatlemania. This gave the singers increased confidence in the fight for control over the musical material chosen for the series. With Jones sticking primarily to vocals and tambourine, the Monkees' live act constituted a classic power trio of electric guitar, electric bass and drums.